Welcome everybody to Week in Review. This is a very important episode, and I'm recording this really on my birthday. I would want you to know this is a serious topic today, and I've got some very important information and insights I think that will be helpful to you. The topic is really getting vaccinated, your body, and not Biden's choice. You know, in the Old Testament, there was an individual named Asa. You can read about him in 2 Chronicles 15 and 16. He was a good man, and he was a political leader. And you know what? He's known for having the people of God commit and covenant that they were going to seek God. And that's what they did for years. But then as he got older and became diminished, and I think there's some parallels to what we're facing with Mr. Biden today, the sad thing is he drifted away. And in 2 Chronicles 16:9, it says, "The eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth in order to show himself strong in behalf of those whose hearts are blameless towards him." In other words, God is watching. Well, what was he seeing with this man in his later years? He did not seek the Lord. There was a national crisis. He didn't seek the Lord. And then when he got sick and there was sickness and disease in his body, and you'll see it on the screen, you know what? When it got even more serious, he didn't seek the Lord, and he even got sicker and he died. We don't want to go this way, so we are going to determine at the outset, we are going to seek the Lord as we deal with this topic. Now, I want you to know this is personal for me because a number of years ago, when I was doing lots of travel, I spoke with a doctor and I wanted to get some medical help in a particular situation. And he recommended a pharmaceutical product, actually made by one of the companies that is putting forth the vaccinations today, the vaccine. Well, I took the product, and as a result of taking it, even though in time my wife said, "I don't feel good about this, I don't," and she had some reason for it, I lost the sight in my left eye. That was 20 years ago, and it's been an ongoing daily battle. I wrote a book, and the book is called, here it is, Blindsided, and there's a commendation here from a medical doctor because as a result of the pharmaceutical product that I took, I not only lost the sight in my eye, but I saw myself involved with many across this country that were suing this pharmaceutical company because of this consequence. So let's not take lightly what we're dealing with today. Now, let's back up a little bit. When Barack Obama came to office, do you remember his initial statement? He said, "This begins the fundamental transformation of America." Now, I prayed for Biden every single day, and I do now, and I prayed for Obama. And I commend his communication, his marriage, his family. But I didn't trust the man because I watched him with abortion on demand and palling around eventually with what? Planned Parenthood, and then lighting up the White House and LGBTQ agenda and saying if you want to keep your doctor, you can do it, and socialized medicine. So I didn't see him as trustworthy. Well, a lot of people believe that as he left office, he's been a major influence along with his wife and others that were part of that initial counseling team with Mr. O'Biden. And that's where Mr. O'Biden is gaining a lot of influence and insight. Now, if you believe that Mr. Biden is being influenced, you might say, well, yeah, you know, I watch him, but what's going on right now? Didn't he say, in his campaigning that mandates what he's now pushing and bullying and trying to punish people? 80 million people aren't vaccinated. Is this unconstitutional? What did Mr. Biden say when he campaigned? Look at this.
While Mr. Biden said he would be willing to get a vaccine, he would not require it for all Americans.
I don't think it should be mandatory. I wouldn't demand to be mandatory, but I would do everything in my power, just like I don't think masks have to be made mandatory nationwide.
He also...
Well, there's obviously been some kind of a change and transformation, and this affects all of us. Now, I want you to know that we really have to approach this carefully, to vax or not to vax. And it's obvious that, with COVID, when the vaccine came forth, there was some mitigation. But then all of a sudden there was a surge, and now people, whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated, there's trouble. And there's something that's a crisis in terms of our country. And we say, well, what has Mr. Biden done about it? Well, let's pause for a second and look at what did he do about Afghanistan. This is called the worst, most horrific foreign policy decision in America's history. I did a commentary on this. The blood is on Mr. Biden's hands. And because of it, he was getting negative attacks from the press, which he doesn't get because it became an international issue. And so he was angry, he was frustrated, he was mad. And, he tried to cover it and said, this has been the most successful evacuation, but nonsense. And when he said that with the White House, they said, well, the Taliban is acting professionally and businesslike. Wait a minute. We just went over 9/11. We're dealing with ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Taliban. These are fanatical killers that want a caliphate. They want to see America's downfall. They want to see Israel destroyed. If you live there, folks, if you were a woman, goodbye to your rights. No more education, driving, put on your burqa, and you'll be taken as a young girl, ripped from your family to be a sex slave. That's reality. If you're gay, goodbye. They'll kill you. You steal, they'll cut off your hand. Folks, these are radical fanatics. And so, Mr. Biden found himself in deep doo-doo, so to speak. So then what was it? Well, maybe a distraction, and handlers begin to push that. And so what did he begin to do? He came on strong. He came on angry, and he was going to set things in order. But the thing was, he began to go above what is constitutional. He began to push. He began to say there's mandates, and we've got to look at this, and you got to consider the big picture. It's emotional. It's complicated. This is not a 1, 2, 3, 60-second spot. We've got to look at this affects the economy. This affects our children, schools. This affects the elderly, people that have underlying conditions. What about natural immunity? What about breakthrough? People that are vaccinated and then they get the COVID. What are we going to do in terms of alternative preventative treatments? Do we trust Dr. Fauci? I don't. I don't see him as trustworthy. What about how people have been lied to, misled? Folks, this is the situation that we're dealing with. And so we've got to take a quick look. And you say, well, Larry, help me. What do I do? Well, let me say this. I give you a disclaimer. First of all, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist in any way. But you know what? About a year ago, I got COVID. So did my wife and my daughter. And you know what? It came because my wife and my daughter went on a time away. They went away, and while they were there, the motel room was not prepared for them. They had to get a rush job cleaning. Well, when they came back, they both had COVID, and then they transmitted it to me. Now, I went 9 days. I didn't even know I had it. But you know what? We came through it. And at that time, I am very thankful for alternative treatments. Are you familiar with hydroxychloroquine? But and zinc and supplements, well, that's been pushed aside. And now all of a sudden, 80 million unvaccinated become the enemy of the state. All of a sudden, they're the reason. That's why we have this surge. But see, that's misleading and that's not honest. So you say, well, where do we go from here? Well, you know what? I would say this. When we look to what Mr. Biden is pushing in, and he's trying to come across now decisive, and he's saying, we're going to get the governors out of the way, and my patience is running thin. He's trying to show everybody a new image. I'm a tough guy. I'm like Clint Eastwood. I'm going to deal with this. But you cannot, in a free society, do a lot of the things that he's trying to pull off. Now, as commander-in-chief, as chief executive, he has certain responsibilities and privileges for those that are under that umbrella. But what about those that are private citizens? What about small businesses? And people today are saying, man, what's going on? Well, I think we're going to see a lot of this is being resisted. Governors, it's going to go probably to the Supreme Court. But in the meantime, you say, well, what are we supposed to do? And that's where I want to help you. Well, let me help you if I can by sharing. I believe there's 3 truths that you have to lay hold of. These are extremely important. The first one is this, and these are reassuring, and these are important. They really are. Because you know what? United Airlines is just one example. If you are not vaccinated, even though you say I have a religious exemption or a medical exemption, sorry, unpaid leave, you're gone. What? And I lived in D.C. area for 24 years. Do you know that their city council, they pushed through an ordinance and they said this, that children to be vaccinated, they have to do it when? They can do it without parental consent. You say, are you serious? Yeah, you don't even have to tell the parents. You say, where is this headed? Well, if you heard The View on their 25th anniversary, Joy Behar said, people that aren't vaccinated, that's by choice. And so, we have a right to kind of pull back on any medical care. It's like, what? What about people that choose a homosexual lifestyle and because of that have HIV or AIDS, or people that are philanderers, or people that are alcoholics or smokers or obese? Are they going to be deprived mental care and medical care? Do you see how serious this is getting? So you've got to be proactive. You've got to be prepared. You've got to do diligence. You've got to apply this. You can't just skirt over this and say, well, I just get on the train, whatever the government says. That's big government control. That's totalitarianism. And many people today are rising up and saying, I've got to take my stand. So what are these three truths? Well, I'll tell you, number one is this, and I'm going to put this on the screen, and that's the unvaxxed do not threaten the vaxxed. Now look on the screen. These are facts. These are for you. 99.999% of fully vaccinated Americans have not had a deadly breakthrough case. And then less than 0.004% of fully vaccinated people had a breakthrough case that led to what? Hospitalization. Look at how minuscule. And less than 0.001% of fully vaccinated people had a breakthrough case that what? Led to death. So for those worried, vaccination is an effective, for those that choose, measure of protection. Unvaccinated people don't change that. Number two, I want you to look on the screen. This is the second truth. You got to lay hold of this, and that is this, that both unvaccinated and vaxxed people spread the Delta virus. Both. Look on the screen. The United Kingdom, I love this, their recent research suggests that fully vaccinated may transmit Delta just as easily as the unvaccinated. Quote, both unvaccinated and vaccinated people who had contracted the SARS-CoV-2 Delta variant had similar peak levels of the virus. And so look at, vaccination will add a significant layer of protection from the virus, but if infected, both vaccinated and unvaccinated will produce and spread similar amounts of the virus. Forcing people to get vaccinated will not stop the variant from spreading. And then number three truth is this one, and this is important. Do you know that natural immunity and real is real? And it really works. Natural immunity. That's what with myself and our family. You know, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. The Cleveland Clinic said, look, if you get the COVID virus, you know what? Then most likely you don't need to get vaccinated. And the same thing, Johns Hopkins said the same thing of, you know, and so that's where people say, wait a minute, I feel I'm being pushed. I feel there's something of a bullying. I'm being made to feel like I'm an enemy of the state. You need to be seeking God, like we said right at the beginning. So when this third point, and this is the truth, look on the screen there. Look at natural immunity isn't being considered. After over a year and a half of clinical observations and research, science suggests that natural immunity is effective and lasting. Look at the facts here. 13 times. Vaccinated people are 13 times more likely to get infected compared to the natural immune. How about 27 times? Fully vaccinated people are 27 times more likely to what? To be symptomatic compared to the naturally immune. And then 30 to 45% of Americans have a natural immunity. So forcing vaccinations on the naturally immune is unscientific. So folks, natural immunity is important, and there are other treatments, but you right now need to seek God, and let's not be like Asa. When he had the disease, he drifted. We're going to seek the Lord. You know, there's a prestigious, and I end with this, medical journal, Lancet. Maybe you're familiar with it, and we have medical friends, and you know what? They ran an article in February where they talked about vaccinated people and the problem that they see now as things are surging of what? Shedding. That vaccinated people, their concern are shedding the infectious virus, and then it's increasing what? It's increasing the problem. So these are issues today, and it's not simple, but we've got to ask God for wisdom in this hour. We've got to remain civil, but folks, this is the time to pray and to recognize I'm going to ask God for wisdom. I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to look at all the alternatives, and I'm going to be obedient to the Lord. This is a very significant time. I lost the sight in my left eye because really of something of a pharmaceutical, and I'm not saying we don't take them, but you need to be careful.